Hello, Pacific Coast Watchers. Welcome to another episode of the Operations Brief, where we detail known operations of the PLA and Allied navies, and much more. So let's start our tour of the Indo-Pacific. We have quite a bit that's been going on this week, and we're going to start up in the Northern Theater. Last week, the USS America was up here in the Yellow Sea, along with the South Koreans and a few other navies, and they were practicing amphibious assaults along the coast of South Korea here. This happened all on the anniversary of the Incheon landings during the Korean War. So China has announced, now that that exercise is over, China has announced that they're going to run a ground forces amphibious exercise, is what they're calling it, and anti-aircraft drills up in the northern part of the Yellow Sea here, just south of Dalian. So we don't have any more detail than that. It's supposed to run from September 17th to the 24th. So they've been out there. We've seen one picture has popped up from it. Unfortunately, I didn't get it loaded in this time. It just made the news today on it. So we're going to have to watch that and see how that's going to go. Interesting fact, though, is that I don't see at least two of the Type 75 amphibious warships are not present for the exercise. So I don't know if they're using some of the smaller Type 71s or how that's going to shake out. We'll have to wait and see and get more information on that. Also up in Dalian, CV-16, the Lian aircraft carrier, is still in dry dock and it's still flooded. They flooded that dry dock on the 31st. I'm a little surprised that it hasn't moved yet. So it kind of makes me wonder what's going on there. And again, have to watch. As we come down into more central China, into Shanghai, we still have the same thing from last week. CV-18, the Fujian, is still in dry dock. We've seen some engine tests and some smoke coming out of the exhaust. So we know they've been running some propulsion tests. The covers are off the catapults, and it's really only a matter of time before they pull this thing out for sea trials. It's been out of the fitting dock once for mooring and some engine tests last month. So this should be, at any point. Across the river from them, two of the Type 075 amphibious assault ships are docked. They've been docked since last week. Haven't seen any movement there. Now, they have three Type 075s, and I am missing the third one. So if anyone has any information on where the third Type 075 amphibious assault ship is stationed, I could really use that information. When they were built and they came out, there was supposed to be one per theater. And, well, now we have two in the Eastern Theater, and not quite sure where the other one is. So continuing south, we get into the Taiwan Strait. And the Taiwan Strait has been interesting over the past several weeks. We've hit a record. 103 aircraft detected near Taiwan, the most ever recorded on a single day. It was in the last 24 hours. 161 fighter jets, bombers, drones, and other aircraft tracked over a period of the 5-day exercise. And 153 of them came across the what they call the median line and violated the air defense identification. So now, if you've watched the video last week, you know that the air defense identification zone is not sovereign airspace. Just want to make that clear. And then we've got the graph down there showing over the past week what's been going on. So it's been something to watch, and there's a lot of discussion around it of whether this is in preparation for anything. And I don't think it is. I think it's just a matter of training because we're not seeing the other two carriers ready yet. Because we do know from observing other exercises that they want to take the carriers east of Taiwan in order to block it off. For one, to strike Guam, and two, to block it off from any Western navies that come along. So, like I said, I don't think we're there yet. Down in the Southern Theater in Henan, CV-17, the Shandong, is back in port as of this morning. It came in a couple of days ago, but I was able to verify by satellite that she is still tied up as of this morning. So I'm sure she's working on refitting. Come up here to Japan, and we have the USS Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group. It's in dock at this point, and the USS America Amphibious Ready Group that was on that exercise in South Korea has also pulled into Sabo and is docked there currently. So it's kind of interesting. There's really not much at sea that we're aware of. Now, of course, there's a destroyer here and there. I will guarantee you that we don't have information on. Moving on down into the Spratlys here, it's pretty much the same thing from last week. There's a whole bunch of Coast Guard and maritime militias that are anchored at the various islands. The one thing that did pop in new this week is that the Philippine government is accusing China of having an illegal fishing fleet at the Iroquois Island, which is down here. And they're accusing them of harvesting coral and overfishing, which the illegal and unregulated fishing is a huge problem in the South China Sea. And it's not, China is the biggest of the bunch, but they aren't the only problem. You have the Vietnamese, you have Indonesians, and quite frankly, you have the Philippines that go out into other people's economic exclusion zones and fish, and they're not supposed to. Right now, President Marcos is considering a fishing ban for some areas to allow the fish to restock, because fish stocks are very low in Philippine waters. More power to him on that. I hope he, honestly kind of hope he does. I know fishing fleet will take a hit for a little bit, but the bigger issue, though, is can he keep China and the other countries out of their economic exclusion zone long enough to let the fish come back? So we haven't seen any new supply missions to Second Thomas Shoals yet, so that's the only news that has come out on that end is that President Marcos does not want to involve the Filipino Navy in resupply missions there. He wants to keep the Coast Guard as the primary agency, and that's basically what he's trying to do. Is he's trying to prevent if you put a Navy destroyer out there, China is going to put a Navy destroyer out there. What I don't think is really realized is that the way the maritime militia works is they always have Coast Guard close to them, and the Coast Guard always has a PLAN destroyer, a Navy destroyer, within 100 to 200 miles in case they get into trouble. So it's something that they definitely, I can see him wanting to keep, President Marcos wanting to keep the Coast Guard, and I think that's probably a wise move at this point. Let's see, farther south, we have the United States Coast Guard cutter Monroe is still out on its patrol. It's been doing illegal fishing enforcement with the Indonesian government. And she's still out there patrolling her sector. Now, down here towards the Natuna Islands, this is in Indonesia, is something kind of special. ASEAN, which is the Association of Asian Nations. There's 10 countries that kind of got into an economic block, if you will. They are holding their own exercise, and this is the first time they've held an exercise without the United States or China, which is pretty impressive. It's good to see them do it. They're out there, they're practicing maritime patrols, search and rescue, disaster relief, and humanitarian relief missions, and they're learning how to work together as a team between all the ships. All 10 countries in ASEAN, Brunei, Burma, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, are all participating in the exercise in one form or another. There's a prospective member to ASEAN, East Timor, who's actually been invited to the exercise as well, which is another first. Anytime that they've held these exercises in the past, of course, it's been with the U.S. or China. They've never invited prospective members before, so that's a pretty impressive feat there that they're starting to strike out on their own. All right, moving on over to the Malacca Straits. This area right here, right through Singapore, and the Malacca Straits dump out into the Indian Ocean. There's been a surge of over 100 Chinese fishing boats that passed through on September 18th, which is it's unprecedented, and we're using that word a lot lately. Where are they going? That's a good question. We don't know yet. They may be heading for fishing off of Africa. They could be out in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's really hard to tell. The other thing that was kind of interesting that went through the Malacca Straits is the Shi Yan 6. And what that is that's a survey ship, a Chinese survey ship. And survey ships will look for resources like gas and oil and minerals. They also do what they call bathymetric readings. If you look at the map there and you see those ridges on the north part of the strait, those were done as part of a bathymetric survey. So you're mapping the ocean floor to some extent. You're also taking temperature measurements. And all this is very, very useful in, again, resource management. But as a dual use, you also need the same information if you're going to operate submarines. And we've been seeing a lot of survey ships throughout the region over the past couple of years in places they weren't supposed to be. But this one specifically, they've announced that it's heading for Colombo, and Colombo is up here in Sri Lanka, and it's kind of an interesting thing here is because this has been a common stop for Chinese vessels, period. They're waiting on permission from the Sri Lankan government to make sure they have permission to dock, so they do ask first. But what they're really doing and what everybody really believes is that they're coming into Colombo to make their presence the norm. So nobody gets overexcited about a ship, a Chinese research vessel, quote-unquote research vessel, pulling in. It won't make the news after a while because, well, it just happens all the time. The Indian government obviously is very concerned because you can see here is Colombo and here's the southern tip of India. Really close to the territorial waters. They don't like that a whole lot. So see how that goes. One other interesting note while we're in the Indian Ocean is over here on the east coast of Africa, in Tanzania, of all places. A Type 52 destroyer and a Type 71 amphibious landing dock have been sighted at Anchorage in in Tanzania there. Now, what's interesting is, you don't see many port calls like this with the 52 and the 71. The amphibious ships don't usually do the port calls. The other thing that's interesting is that there's no supply ship with them. Usually it's 2 destroyers and a supply ship, or 2 ships and a supply ship, and there's not as far as the media is concerned anyway, there's not a supply ship. Which, like I said, I find interesting, because up here let me get it so it gets the labels up here for you. In Djibouti is the closest supply point. That is the Chinese base. Let me see, I lost it here. But Djibouti is the Chinese base in the region that usually is hosting the anti-piracy patrols up here in the Gulf of Aden. So let's see here. And I do believe that is it for today in the operations brief. So we're just a lot going on. I hope this video has come out a little bit shorter than it did last week. I think it did by about 30 minutes, which was good. Last week was very, very busy. But there's plenty going on, and we're going to try to do this every week, about midweek. I'm going to put out an operations brief. Now, we did have some technical issues with the Intel brief this week. I was hoping to get that out last Friday, and unfortunately that did not happen. So we're going to shoot to have the Intel brief out within the next couple of days. The topic on the subject is going to be the maritime militia, and kind of explaining what all these fishing boats are doing out there. Anyway, that's all for me. I hope you liked this video and found value in it. If you did, please remember to give us a thumbs up and click on the bell to receive notifications for new videos. To continue the conversation and view other content, which there's a lot of, please join us at the Pacific Coast Watchers Facebook group. I'll have the link in the description below, and I will see you next week. Have a great day.